transferring skills, but rather like how do young people interact between them and they grow skills using informal and non-formal learning practices of any kind. For an example I can bring, for example, I was organizing a youth exchange in Spain, in a community in southern Spain called Molino de Guadalmesí, and it was a youth exchange that was exploring the 4/5 dimensions of sustainability according to the Gaia education frame. And this was very much like different approaches coming together for the economic side, for the ecological, social, cultural side. And we were exploring different techniques according to the skills of the group. And finally, the youth participation activity. They're very interesting projects. We're not going to talk a lot about them, but just for you to know, they are focusing more on the local level. So it's how can young people get more involved in their local communities, and they can participate and bring their own project and take responsibility and really create something that stays and builds community where they are. And they're usually a little bit longer projects and a little bit more complex than the other two, I would say.
Yeah, also, these participation activities are sometimes really at the local level, and then bringing that group, that like having these kind of different actions in different countries, and then bringing them together for an exchange as well. So that was kind of something really new to us, because most of the time it's the mobility of like, okay, they moved somewhere, then there's no real follow-up on what they did in the youth exchange. Apart from what the project management is going to do and maybe the youth leaders, but this one really is looking into, okay, let's create different or the similar action everywhere, and then what is the result and the impact of that.
Voila.
Wow. Okay, switch.
With your computer?
Sí. Yes. Nope, not from me. Okay, so the European Solidarity Corps, which I find very funny that they call it the ESC as well. I mean, in other countries I know it as ESC, and in German it's ESK, but they decided to go with the European Song Contest. Don't know why. So sometimes if I tell people about ESC, they're really like, what are you doing with the European Song Contest, and why are there young people involved? So yeah, that's one of the things where I find it very funny. So yeah, just like the Erasmus Plus, it's the 2021 to 2027 period. And so what is the ESC? It's the EU program to create opportunities for young people to volunteer in Europe within the topic of solidarity. And it's always important to understand what is young people, because, well, I mean, I'm 31 now and I still feel like a young person, but according to the ESC, I'm no longer part of it. So any person who's in the age from 18 to the end of their 30th year, so just before you turn 31, you can still go like a day before you can start your last activity. It is until the year 2027, and there is a yearly program guide. Part of the history is that it was called EVS, so some of you know it as the European Volunteering Service, and it ran from 1996 to 2018, and it was part of the Erasmus Plus. So sometimes people are also just like confused where we're coming from if we now talk about ESC. But in 2018, or a little bit before that, they realized that it's becoming much more of an own program, because it's so much not just focusing on moving people, but also getting the experience by working, because volunteering in that sense is about working. And so in 2018, just before the old program ended with Erasmus, they already split the budget and said, okay, this is the budget that we're only going to look for volunteering opportunities to be created. And then that was from 2018 to 2020.
Mm-hmm. How would you define solidarity, and like, what's the meaning of it?
We'll explore that more in depth the next phase, which is like part of this training, to understand what they define as solidarity. I mean, it's also something about this helping people to work together, basically, because some young people coming from cities being not as included in their environment, they sometimes don't know how to work together anymore. So that is kind of part of solidarity, to just like link each other's arms and do something. Or growing food is something of a solidarity act if it's then going back into the community. So sometimes the core things that we do as communities or eco-villages is already what we say is solidarity, and it's about us phrasing it that way. So yeah.
But I think the general idea from the Commission was that, okay, if we look at the European societies in general, with the polarization, with the increasing levels of inequalities, with youth unemployment, let's focus through this program to bring more social inclusion and somehow try to give also more purpose to young people, and also especially to young people with fewer opportunities. So I think it's on the idea level, the aim of the European Commission is to give purpose to young people, to feel useful, because this is one of the basic needs of human beings, of being useful for having a meaning. And with such high levels of unemployment, with polarization, with everything, we, in these societies these days, we don't really perhaps have so many links with people who are a bit different. And often young people in the consumerist societies, they can't really feel useful. So on the idealistic level, it's one of the ways how we can offer the young people an opportunity to help other members of the societies who are less fortunate, who are different than us, and to really create the links. And also inside Europe, with the whole European project of let's make more connections, let's move, let's learn about each other. Let's integrate our societies. So I think on the idea level, that's it.
Yeah. So just as Simona was saying about the Erasmus guide, program guide, we also have a Bible for just the European Solidarity Corps, and this is the guide. I send that link into the Telegram group, and we're going to work with it so that you know your way around the Bible and not be like, there's too many pages, I don't know, I'm lost. So again, also this program has its objectives. One of them is to strengthen cohesion, solidarity, democracy, citizenship, and responding to societal challenges. So part of what Lina already described, to just bring Europe more to a local level and then to just spread it out again.
Yeah. This program is also for non-Europeans, young people living in Europe.
I will come to that part. So another objective is to promote sustainable development, social inclusion, and equal opportunities. I do love how the guides always tend to get a very bureaucratic kind of wording. So you're just like, sustainable development, what do you mean? And I mean, yeah, part of what I have lived in as communities and trying to create that connection in any kind of sustainable project is already sustainable development, to go into a future that is resilient. And as well as the equal opportunities, again, also referring to people with few opportunities who have difficulties to just, I don't know, get the opportunity to actually go somewhere because they have been living in countries that in general are not offering as much support. Like coming from Germany, I have had so much support, and hearing other stories, I do know how it is in other countries. And to just, yeah, have that kind of thing that to not exclude people. And another one is to improve young people's skills, and competencies for personal, educational, social, civic, cultural, and professional development. Oh, I missed a comma. My God. Okay, but yeah, it's definitely aiming that within every volunteering opportunity, it's not just about us getting the support, but to give the support back. It's a learning opportunity for them to develop their skills, to explore their skills, and as well as part of it is not just working, for example, in the garden, but sometimes to reflect on what they're actually doing and understanding why they are planting stuff, and how that relates to the nature and to taking care of our planet.
I just want to drop in one thing, that national agencies sometimes have very different understanding and interpretation of the principles and their activities relating to that. Just an example that, for instance, for Estonian National Agency a few years ago, ESC volunteer working in the community garden was not really a valid activity unless they were also participating in a training activity afterwards where they were supporting, sharing the knowledge to a wider community. And they also considered this activity to be too much focused on inside the community and not to the wider community around. So it's always a good idea before you start drafting to actually consult also with the national agency. What do they think about on the second or the third thing? Because what Annika is referring at the moment, in Germany this is a no problem, and in some other European country it can actually be a problem.
Yeah, that's the beauty and the difficulty of this program, that every country still takes their own turn on it. So sometimes it's also a good way, even though at least in Germany, they translate the ESC guide, sometimes to look in how do they phrase it in your own language, even though it all comes from the English part. Okay, but then a last objective is to facilitate young people's active citizenship. So to, in some level, engage with the local communities, as well as sometimes to maybe learn more about democratic life. So at least in most of the Gen communities I know is about also showing how we do processes and to include young people in those kind of processes as well, so they learn about it. So the yearly guide and the information that it presents is one thing about the quality label, which is the accreditation for each organization, and it has different levels. Like I said, for Gen Germany, we have elite quality label. I will come to that at a second slide. Then it's also having information on volunteering projects, because there's different ones. There's individual volunteering, where it's just about one person moving somewhere. And volunteering teams, where you have a bunch of people joining together, creating something like a youth exchange, but as they're working, it's different. But yeah, it's just the mixture of it. Then something that they have as well, and I want to mention it here, but I'm not really going in depth with it because I never used it, is volunteering teams in higher priority areas. And like I said, the guide itself is specifying what are the higher priority areas that they see. And one more thing that I can also talk more in like individual things is solidarity projects, which is a local project. So young people at the community saying, we want to do this, and that's how it connects back to the local community, and it's going to be beautiful for them.
It's yearly because they change it every year?
Yearly because they do adapt some information. So sometimes they chose, they go more specific in higher priority areas. Sometimes they just put in a little bit more clarity on how the funds can be used, giving examples. So yeah. It's also because every year there's 2 deadlines. It's the same with Erasmus, one in February and well, sometimes there's a third one, but most of the time it's 2, one in February and one in October, where you can actually go and apply for these funds. So it's also matching it up with that. And sometimes, well, at least if you remember Brexit, it changes who are the eligible countries. So eligible countries are usually EU member states and third countries associated to the program. For those who have been involved with the ESC and Erasmus for a longer time, they were formerly called program countries. Now they have a very long name, but anyway. And then there's third countries not associated to the program, which are formerly called partner countries. And that's where I'm coming back into who can be involved in the programs. And these are the ones that can directly, at least the EU members can directly ask for money and have so-called national agencies who are the direct contact for any kind of information. If you want to be more specific, like, yeah, Lina said with the Estonian, you should maybe check if the community gardens are still something that they wouldn't consider solidarity project. And then there is third countries not associated, which are these ones, and they can take part. For example, we have Bahagan here from Armenia. So that is a beauty that we can include more countries from others. Like I also have a volunteer from Georgia right now in a German community. Yeah.
What is that EFTA country, sorry? EFTA country, like Norway? Where is?
Yeah, EFTA is that they are part of the what is it?
European Free Trade Association.
Thanks.
European what?
Free Trade Association.
Free Trade Association. And they have like national agency as well?
I need to check
Well, I mean,
with Norway.
basically, no?
Yeah, but it's
I can't really. Do they say anything about Switzerland?
Switzerland is not a part.
Yeah, but same different.
But maybe Switzerland is in the free trade.
With Switzerland, it's an interesting case because Switzerland used to be part of the European Voluntary Service, but they are not anymore. But they have money, and they are super interested in sending Swiss volunteers to European countries, and the rules are more or less same than with the ESC, and they want to work with organizations who work with the ESC. So yeah, you can also invite Swiss volunteers to consultation.
Yeah, so they have their own program, which is basically a copy of the ESC, but they just handle their money in their own way.
So coming back to this nationality question, like the residence is enough or not?
Yes,
Is enough.
yes.
Long-term residency.
Long term. But that means more than a year? No.
That's not specified, and they have no way of checking it. It's just very important that the participant or the volunteer that is applying is having in their past tool a country of residence that is within these countries.
My experience is usually that the national ID code that they can check in the registry is enough.
The national ID code.
Like, for instance, in Estonia, you might not have an Estonian citizenship, but if you have a long-term residency, also, for instance, the Ukrainian refugees at the moment in EU, they have a long-term residency situation, which gives them the kind of the national number of the country. So if they have that and they have a long-term residency in one of the EU countries, they are treated in
The same.
yeah, as everybody else.
Okay.
Is Russia still involved? Russia? Is it still involved?
So far, yes. I had we had one Russian girl, Sibylin, last year actually, which was an interesting topic as well in the eco village. But
Yeah, you should a little bit keep an eye on that because this can change.
yeah, just like the Brexit was the same thing. Like they were still included like in old projects, but once they ran out, they were excluded.
Regarding residency, I think in practice it doesn't really matter, no? Because it's all the organizations who are managing volunteers or participants that we are checking it out, or it really matters, like European Union can check if a participant doesn't have a residency.
So the EU doesn't check, but the national agency can check. Now